This story begins with an employee named Cooper, who, as usual, was on his way to work. After reaching the office, he sat in front of his boss and started discussing something. But suddenly, in the next moment, a high-frequency sound started spreading all around. The sound was so intense that anyone who heard it immediately lost consciousness. Cooper and his boss also couldn't understand anything and collapsed, unconscious. Then, we are shown that enormous insects had arrived at the scene, trapping everyone present in their webs. These insects were so huge that humans looked small in comparison. The terrifying creatures were not only ensnaring humans in their webs but also using their stingers to suck their blood. The scene was horrifying to witness. However, within a short time, Cooper regained consciousness. He managed to free himself from the web and now wanted to wake up his boss and the others in the office. But then, one of those monstrous alien insects was right there, attacking Cooper. Somehow, he defended himself using his hands. If the insect had managed to bite him even once, he would have been torn to pieces. But Cooper kept hitting the insect with whatever he could grab. The good thing was that this giant insect was alone. Cooper somehow managed to drive the insect away and immediately freed his boss from the web. His boss had realized the danger and was extremely terrified. She quickly ran to save her daughter, Sarah, who was inside a car. However, Cooper felt that stepping outside at this moment was too risky, so he told his boss to stay while he went to check on Sarah. As Cooper carefully approached the car, he saw that Sarah was entirely covered in webbing. This meant that the deadly insects had spread everywhere, attacking and killing anyone they encountered. Cooper quickly freed Sarah from the web, but when she regained consciousness, she became furious at Cooper and sprayed pepper spray in his eyes. No matter how much Cooper tried to do the right thing, things just weren't going his way. Meanwhile, Sarah's mother, worried about her daughter, rushed outside. But then, something terrifying happened. A flying, monstrous insect swooped in and snatched Sarah's mother right before her eyes. By now, the deadly creature had most likely killed her. Sarah was in complete shock, unable to comprehend what was happening. Cooper quickly took Sarah inside the office because staying outside at this moment was extremely dangerous. By now, both Cooper and Sarah had understood that those terrifying giant insects were attracted to sound. That meant they had to stay hidden and remain completely silent. Together, Cooper and Sarah started trying to free the people trapped in the webs. While rescuing one man from the web, Sarah was suddenly grabbed by the throat. The man, thinking that Sarah and the others were responsible for the attack, had reacted out of fear. Sarah kept pleading with him to let go, but at that moment, one of the deadly creatures arrived and started attacking everyone. Cooper, along with the others present, fought back against the insect with all their strength. In the end, they managed to kill the creature. The man who had attacked Sarah was named Ben. Realizing his mistake, he finally let her go. He now understood that the real attackers were these monstrous insects. However, Sarah was furious with Ben. The entire company belonged to her mother, and Ben had always treated her with respect. But due to a misunderstanding, he had reacted violently toward her, which deeply angered Sarah. One by one, they all worked together to free the remaining people trapped in the webs. Everyone was panicked and confused, trying to understand what was happening. They knew they had to escape from this place at any cost. At that moment, a man named Brian spoke up, saying he had a truck they could use to get out of there. However, Sarah quickly warned them that those deadly creatures were attracted to sound, and if they started the truck, more creatures would come swarming toward them. But Brian ignored Sarah's warning. Along with a few others, he got into his truck, determined to drive away. Meanwhile, Cooper and the remaining survivors stepped outside to watch what was about to unfold. Brian, along with a few of his friends, started driving the truck. The loud engine noise attracted a swarm of massive insects, which immediately charged toward the vehicle. Brian didn't stop the truck, and as a result, he ended up crushing many of the creatures under the tires. He believed that this method would allow them to reach a safe place, but he had no idea that there were also deadly flying insects. One of these flying creatures crashed directly into the windshield, throwing the truck off balance. Brian and the others inside were badly injured in the crash. Meanwhile, Cooper and the remaining survivors witnessed a horrifying sight. One of the flying insects grabbed an officer and started devouring him mid-air. Panicked, Cooper, Sarah, and the others sprinted back toward the office building. But just then, something shocking happened. An elderly man named Albert was suddenly snatched by one of the flying creatures. The insect pierced him with its deadly stinger. However, Ben and the others fought bravely and somehow managed to rescue Albert before it was too late. The group rushed into the building and made their way to the top floor. From there, they hoped to get a clear view of what was happening in the city. When Cooper and the others looked in one direction, they saw a strange red smoke rising into the sky. No one had any idea what it was. Then, when they turned their gaze in another direction, they saw a massive swarm of flying insects moving in unison toward an unknown destination. Where had these creatures come from? And what was their purpose? The answers to these questions would soon be revealed. At that moment, Albert suggested that the safest option was to take refuge in a military base. There, they could be completely protected from the monstrous creatures. Cooper agreed, revealing that his father worked at a military base. If they could make it there, they would have access to food, water, and security. Everyone thought this was a great idea and began making plans to head there. However, escaping during daylight was too risky, so they decided to stay inside the office for the time being. One of the women in the group, a biologist, spoke up. She insisted that they needed DNA samples from the creatures. By studying their genetic makeup, she believed they could discover their weaknesses and determine where these terrifying monsters had come from. Ben, Cooper, and Sarah worked together to set up a trap. Their plan was to make a noise to lure one of the creatures into a room and then quickly shut the door, trapping it inside. They executed the plan perfectly and successfully captured one of the massive insects. Meanwhile, Sarah grabbed a container and carefully extracted a DNA sample from the creature's stinger. Once they had secured all the samples, they locked the insect inside the room. Now, all they could do was wait for the right opportunity to escape. As they sat inside the office discussing their situation, Albert recalled hearing a high-frequency sound when everything had started. The others agreed, they had all heard the same noise just before the terrifying creatures appeared and attacked. However, Cooper was puzzled by one thing: why were these creatures trapping humans inside their webs instead of simply killing them? That's when Sarah explained her theory. There's only one possible reason. Just like we preserve our food in a freezer or store it to keep it fresh, these creatures are doing the same with us. They are keeping our flesh and blood fresh inside their webs so they can consume us later. Slowly, everyone started to realize the horrifying truth. But suddenly, the creature they had trapped in the room began making strange, loud noises. The sound was so intense that it could be heard from far away. Panicked, everyone rushed into the room, trying to silence the creature. Albert, showing great bravery, grabbed a wooden object and killed the monster. However, they still didn't understand why it had started making such noises. That's when the biologist in their group shared her terrifying realization. This creature wasn't just making noise, it was calling for reinforcements. More of them will be here soon. Knowing that danger was rapidly approaching, she urged Cooper and the others to leave immediately. Cooper, concerned, asked, "Why aren't you coming with us?" The biologist replied, "I need to study these creatures. I can protect myself, so stop worrying about me and focus on saving your own lives." After hearing this, Cooper, Sarah, Ben, and Albert prepared to make their escape. Cooper, Sarah, Ben, Albert, and another woman set off toward a new location. Their main goal was to reach the military base at any cost. However, the base was located far from the city, meaning they had a long journey ahead. Their first stop was Albert's house. The moment Albert arrived, he was completely shocked. Those monstrous creatures had killed his wife. His entire world shattered in an instant. She was the only reason he had to keep going, and now, she was gone. Overcome with rage, Albert stormed out of the house, holding a shotgun in his hands. His mind was set, he would take revenge on these creatures no matter what. However, Sarah wasn't in favor of carrying a gun. She warned him, "If you fire that gun, the noise will attract more of those monsters toward us." Albert assured them, "This gun is only for emergencies." After that, the group continued their journey and soon reached the home of Hannah, the other woman in their group. The moment they stepped inside, Hannah saw her sister lying unconscious, trapped completely inside the creature's webbing. She immediately rushed to free her. But suddenly, the garage door creaked open, and out came Hannah's older brother. He had been infected by the creatures and had fully transformed into one of them. Hearing their voices, he immediately lunged toward them, attacking his own sisters first. In an instant, he used his razor-sharp claws to kill his unconscious sister. Then, he turned toward Hannah, ready to end her as well. At this point, Hannah's brother had lost all traces of his humanity. He had no memories of his past life, his family, his loved ones, nothing. Despite the horror, Hannah desperately pleaded with the group, "Please don't kill him. He's still my brother." But the situation was getting worse by the second. If someone didn't stop him, Hannah would be dead in moments. Cooper had no choice, he pulled the trigger and killed Hannah's brother. Hannah was devastated, but there was no time to grieve. After defeating the creature, the group decided to stay in her house for the night. They knew it was too dangerous to travel in the dark, especially with those monsters lurking around. That night, something unexpected happened. Hannah, deeply impressed by Cooper's bravery, confessed her feelings and proposed to him. But Cooper had no time for love. His only priority was survival. Hannah, feeling rejected, became furious. Meanwhile, something terrifying was happening to Albert. His body was beginning to show the effects of the creature's deadly claws. The infection was spreading. Albert turned to his friends and said, "If I start transforming into one of them, you know what you have to do." Then Albert said, "If I turn into one of those creatures, don't kill me. No matter how my life turns out, I want to enjoy it." Everyone admired Albert for his courage. He knew he was going to die, yet he accepted his fate with a smile. At dawn, they all set out toward the military base. As they walked along a large road, Sarah told Cooper, "I need to go to the place where the red smoke is rising. Maybe that's the creature's nest, and my mom might be there." However, Cooper hesitated and said, "Do you really think your mom is still alive? The chances are very slim. And if you go there, your life will be in danger too." Sarah fell into deep thought, struggling with the decision. Just then, a swarm of flying creatures appeared in the sky, heading toward them. Sarah, terrified, instinctively grabbed Cooper's hand. These same flying monsters had taken her mother away. But when Hannah saw Cooper and Sarah holding hands, she became furious. She thought Cooper had rejected her proposal because he was interested in Sarah instead. Enraged, Hannah started screaming loudly, deliberately trying to attract the creatures. Cooper, Sarah, and Albert desperately tried to stop her, pleading with her to calm down, but Hannah refused to listen and continued yelling. Realizing the situation was getting out of hand, Albert had to make a tough decision. He used his shotgun and shot Hannah, killing her instantly. However, the loud gunshot attracted even more flying creatures to their location. Albert fought bravely, shooting down as many of the creatures as he could, but then one of the flying insects attacked Cooper, trying to bite him. Sarah rushed to save Cooper, but the creature seized her instead and carried her away. Cooper fought with all his might to rescue Sarah, but ultimately, he failed. The flying creature took her far away. Cooper was devastated, unsure of how to save her. But for now, he forced himself to stay calm and continued his journey toward his father. Somehow, Cooper finally reached his father, who had no idea about the horrors that had unfolded. Cooper's father was shouting loudly, calling for his missing dog, which had most likely been devoured by the monstrous insects by now. Meanwhile, Cooper begged his father for help. He was determined to go to the creature's nest and rescue Sarah at any cost. However, his father refused to assist him, unwilling to risk his son's life in such a dangerous mission. As Cooper's friends gathered inside his house, Albert suddenly noticed strange changes happening in his body. The infection had completely spread through his system, and he began transforming into a terrifying creature. Large, sharp legs started emerging from his body, and within moments, he went berserk, causing destruction all around him. Left with no other choice, Ben, Cooper, and his father had to kill Albert to stop him. However, the loud gunfire attracted a swarm of deadly creatures, which began crawling into the house. Ben, Cooper, and his father fought relentlessly, killing as many as they could, but their numbers seemed endless. Realizing they couldn't hold them off forever, Cooper's father led them into the basement, a safe place where the creatures couldn't reach them. After spending a few hours in hiding, Cooper confronted his father again, asking if he would help him rescue Sarah. But his father still refused, unwilling to let him take such a risk. Furious, Cooper decided to leave on his own. However, as he made his way through the area, he was suddenly arrested by police officers. They suspected that Cooper, like many others, was infected. Cooper and Ben were taken into custody and locked inside a jail cell. Cooper kept insisting that he was not infected and that they could test him if they wanted. The officers also arrested Cooper's father. But when one of the officers checked him, they discovered a bite mark on his back. It was clear that he was infected. At that moment, Cooper's father suddenly grabbed a gun and started shooting at the officers. He even took a female officer hostage at gunpoint. However, the officer turned out to be incredibly brave. She fought back, knocking Cooper's father to the ground and rendering him unconscious. Just then, another prisoner inside the jail fully transformed into a monstrous creature. Using its razor-sharp tentacles, it impaled the female officer through her skull, causing panic and chaos to erupt. Seizing the opportunity, Cooper's father started attacking the remaining officers, killing them one by one. Cooper's father was the first to free him and Ben from the jail cell, and they quickly escaped. The remaining officers were left behind, where the monstrous creature would surely finish them off. Having witnessed everything, Cooper's father finally decided to help him. Together, they set off towards the creature's nest. Inside the nest, Sarah was trapped and horrified by what she saw. The insects had captured multiple people, wrapping them in web-like cocoons instead of killing them outright. As she observed more closely, she realized the horrifying truth: the creatures weren't just killing humans, they were storing them for a reason. Her fear turned to terror when she saw the massive queen of the hive devouring the captured humans one by one. Desperate, she started searching for her mother among the captives, hoping to find her alive. Meanwhile, as soon as Cooper, his father, and the others arrived at the nest, Cooper's father suddenly restrained his son by tying him to a tree. He then knocked Ben unconscious and left him behind. Cooper's father didn't want his son to get injured in this dangerous mission. Armed with several sticks of dynamite, he proceeded alone into the nest. Just as he was about to enter, Sarah, in a panic, attacked him, mistaking him for an enemy. She fought with all her strength, but he managed to tell her, "I'm Cooper's father. I'm here to help you." Realizing her mistake, Sarah immediately stopped and hugged him, relieved to have an ally. She quickly treated his wounds and led him deeper into the nest. Sarah informed him that she had seen the insect queen, a monstrous entity that moved around the nest, feasting on humans. She suggested that if they could manage to kill the queen, the rest of the insects might lose control, giving them a chance to wipe them out. However, as they looked up, they saw the alien queen perched above them. Without warning, the monstrous queen lunged at them. Meanwhile, Ben regained consciousness and decided to free Cooper. He untied him, and they both headed toward the nest. As they entered, they saw countless flying creatures swarming out of the hive. Cooper warned Ben not to go too deep inside, but since Ben had trouble hearing, he didn't register Cooper's words and ventured further into the nest. Forced to follow him, Cooper ran after Ben. While navigating the dark, eerie tunnels of the nest, the two accidentally stumbled and fell onto a massive cluster of insect eggs. These eggs had just been laid by the alien queen, and their presence there was about to trigger something far worse. Cooper could hear the continuous gunfire echoing through the nest, and he immediately realized that it had to be his father. Inside, Cooper's father was relentlessly firing at the alien queen, trying to protect Sarah. However, the creature's exoskeleton was so tough that bullets barely affected it. As soon as the queen turned to attack his father, Cooper and Ben arrived and started shooting at her with a shotgun. Feeling threatened, the queen let out a deafening high-frequency screech, the same sound that had been heard earlier in the story. The sound waves were so intense that everyone had to cover their ears in agony. However, Ben, who was already partially deaf, was unaffected. Taking advantage of this, he grabbed a stick of dynamite from Cooper's father and threw it straight into the insect queen's mouth. For a brief moment, the queen was stunned. Ben shouted for everyone to run, but Cooper's father was gravely injured and could no longer move. Realizing his fate, Cooper's father handed his son a remote control detonator, the device that could trigger the dynamite now lodged inside the queen's body. He urged Cooper and the others to leave him behind and escape. Cooper refused to abandon his father, but his father reassured him, saying, "We will meet again." However, before he could say anything else, the infection in his body took over, and he started transforming into a monstrous creature. Realizing there was no time left, Cooper grabbed the detonator and ran as fast as he could, trying to put distance between himself and the queen. Just as he pressed the button to trigger the explosion, nothing happened. The dynamite inside the queen's body failed to detonate. That's when Cooper realized, the remote control had no battery. Panic set in as the enraged insect queen began attacking him with full force. He barely dodged her strikes, running frantically for his life. Then, an idea struck him. The flashlight he had been carrying, it had a battery. Without wasting a second, he ripped the battery out of the flashlight and shoved it into the detonator. As Cooper ran a safe distance away from the nest, he pressed the button on the remote. This time, the detonator worked. The dynamite inside the insect queen's body exploded with a massive blast, sending shockwaves through the entire nest. The force of the explosion was so powerful that the entire structure collapsed, burying the queen and all the insect offspring inside. Sarah and Ben rushed to pull Cooper away from the destruction just in time. The nest burned to the ground, taking every last creature with it. However, the victory came at a painful cost. Cooper's father was gone. Hours later, Cooper slowly opened his eyes to find Sarah and Ben sitting beside him. He murmured, "I just had a dream. In my dream, we destroyed the queen and wiped out the entire nest." Sarah and Ben smiled. "That wasn't a dream. We actually did it," Ben said. With a mix of relief and grief, the three of them gathered their strength and set out to rescue the remaining survivors trapped in the creature's webbing. They moved through the wreckage, cutting people free, helping them stand, and assuring them that the nightmare was over. But just as they thought it was all behind them, something caught their attention. The three of them turned toward the road ahead, their expressions shifting from relief to pure shock. But the story doesn't reveal who or what it was. And our story ends here.